We moved into this house about 3 years ago, really attracted by the location and the garden more than the actual house itself. There would have been a house here built about in the 1890s, but it was demolished and completely rebuilt in the 70s, so we had a standard 70s built house which hadn't really been particularly well maintained since then. It needed some refurbishment work doing on it, and we wanted to extend a little bit at the same time. So we moved in 3 years ago. It took us a year or so to figure out exactly what we wanted to do, and then another year or so to get planning permission and architects and find a builder and stuff. And then we finally got going with the building work. Our aim was to extend and to improve the environmental performance of the house at the same time, and generally make it a nicer, more comfortable place to live. The house was probably pretty average performing in terms of energy performance and in terms of comfort for living in. It had, it wasn't too drafty, it had some sort of cheap UPVC double glazing. When it was built in the 70s, it was built with a cavity wall, although it's a very thin cavity, a 50mm cavity I think, and that had been insulated with fluff injected into it, but not terribly well. There was a lot of gaps in it. The floors had no insulation in at all. On the ground floor it was solid floors. The floors were icy cold downstairs, and it had a really old gas boiler central heating system in it that probably wasn't very efficient. Some of the stuff we really wanted to do on the house, other stuff it's just really that we had the opportunity because we were getting scaffolding up and getting rendering redone and getting a lot of other work done on the house. We're fitting the kind of things that you wouldn't retrofit normally because you'd have to rip your house apart to do it, but since we were ripping our house apart anyway, it's just an opportunity now to do these things which will stand us in good stead for the future. The most important thing we're doing undoubtedly is masses of insulation, underfloor insulation, roof insulation, wall insulation, draft proofing. That's the key things of the insulation. So we chose to insulate the exterior of the house using a Kingspan insulation board with a render covering. In between the render and the insulation board there's a proprietary system involving a mesh which holds the whole thing together, and the insulation itself is fixed to the house using these plastic fittings, so it's mechanically fixed into the house, and it's also stuck on with a bonding material. We've put in triple glazed windows in both roof windows and wall windows. We're putting in a mechanical ventilation system with heat recovery, so having draft proofed the house, then we need to get some fresh air into it. Essentially, rather than having extractor fans in kitchens and bathrooms, we suck the air out, warm damp air out of those rooms. It all comes back to one central point, and that's used to warm the air which is coming into the house, and then we blow the warm air gently back into the bedrooms and the living rooms. Air circulates through the house. The house is really well draft proofed. That's crucial with this kind of system. It's hard to put in rigid pipes in a house where you're retrofitting a system like this, so they tend to use flexible ducting. Because our house is currently ripped apart, it's not so hard for us to put in rigid pipes, so that's what we've done. We're also generating our own energy to an extent through solar photovoltaic to generate electricity and solar thermal to provide us with some hot water. We don't have any south-facing roofs. The most efficient place to put your solar panels is south-facing to get the maximum sun. Our roofs are all east and west facing, but it just means the panels are a little bit less efficient. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. When we were installing the solar panels, it was actually very quick and clean. The solar PV panels were done in a couple of days, and the solar thermal panel, which is much smaller, was done in one day, although there's still some plumbing inside the house to be done later. Behind the vacuum tubes there's a pipe which runs down to our hot water tank, and that circulates heat through the hot water tank, much like a gas boiler is used to heat hot water in a hot water tank. This just does the same thing. In fact, our hot water will be linked to the gas boiler as well, so when there's not enough sun to heat the hot water we want, then it'll be topped up by a gas central heating system in the normal way. but through the sunny months of the year we're thinking this should generate most of the hot water we need with very minimal gas input. It's always going to be a very disruptive building project. We're extending and refurbishing internally and externally. Pretty much every room in the house has been affected. We could easily have chosen to move out, but I was quite keen to stay here because it's home and I live here, because we've got ducks in the garden that somebody's got to look after if I'm not here, and just because I wanted to be involved and to see the building work going on. But part of the reason also is security of the house. We haven't had any windows in most of the house for some while. It's more secure with somebody living here. So yeah, I've been living here throughout. A lot of people wouldn't have wanted to do that, I'm sure. It has been pretty disruptive. It's been fairly uncomfortable at times, but I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else, I think.